Recently I've been watching some videos about the Swedish language and yeah, I found them very entertaining, insightful, and it's been fun to learn about the language. And one of my viewers recommended something along those lines. This is understanding the Swedish pitch accent. So yeah, I didn't want to do too much research on this because I have no idea really what it is. I googled it to just get a bit of an overview, and it said that some words in Swedish can be understood differently by the pitch or how you say the word. I know there's some languages that are like a tonal language, Mandarin for instance, so there'll be different words that maybe you can spell the same phonetically, but depending on how you actually say it, it has a different meaning. I never knew this was a thing in Swedish. I still don't know if that's exactly what it is, but interested to know more about this. You can tell me what you think about it as well. Let's check out.
Hi, this is Adam, and welcome to this lecture on understanding the Swedish pitch accent. First of all, what is a pitch accent? Well, to put it very briefly, pitch accent is a feature of certain languages where there are distinct tonal patterns that appear in different words, giving them different meanings. It's similar to the more familiar concept of tone found in, for example, Chinese, but it's not exactly the same thing. Besides Swedish, some well-known languages with pitch accent include Norwegian, Lithuanian, Serbian, Japanese, and ancient Greek.
Interesting, yeah, so it's not the same as tone, but it's, I guess, maybe similar in a way, but it's quite a random list of countries or languages that it's found in. I wonder why. I mean, obviously Norway and Sweden are geographically close. I wonder why certain countries have it and certain countries don't, where that originates from actually.
So, let's talk about the Swedish pitch accent. In Swedish, there are two types of accents. The first one is called accent 1, or acute accent. The second one is called accent 2, or grave accent. Every Swedish word has one of these two accents, and like I said, the meaning of a word can change depending on what accent it has. For example, anden, the duck, versus anden, the spirit. Did you hear?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I can definitely hear the difference between them. This is most replayed. I want to hear that again just to hear, but for sure I heard a big difference there. And yeah, I wonder if it varies like between regional dialects or regional accents in Sweden, if it makes it harder to like understand certain words like that or how they're pronounced.
Depending on what accent it has. For example, anden, the duck, versus anden, the spirit. Did you hear the difference? If you didn't, don't worry about it. That's the reason we're here. Understanding the pitch accent and pronouncing it correctly is critical to a native-like pronunciation of Swedish. Swedes immediately hear if the accent of a word is off, and it's a very effective way of hearing if someone does not speak Swedish as their native language. On the other hand, if you do get it right, then you will sound really proficient in the language, and all Swedes will point out how well you speak the language, even if they don't realize exactly why they think so. Well, unless you live in Finland, of course. In Finland Swedish, there is no pitch accent. But then you wouldn't know if we were talking about a duck or a spirit, now would you? Now, the actual sound of the two accent types varies between the different regions of Sweden. In this video, I will use the East Central Swedish pronunciation, which is the one used in the region of Stockholm-Uppsala, and leave the other regional pronunciations to another video. I will write accent 1 with an acute accent, and accent 2 with a tilde. Usually a grave accent is used for accent 2, but I believe the tilde will be more pedagogical, and I think you'll see why soon enough. Okay, let's get technical. What is the difference between the two accents? Accent 1 is the normal accent, so to speak. In words with this accent, the pitch on the stressed syllable goes up and then down again in the unstressed syllable that follows. Even more technically, it looks like this. Let's listen to some words with accent 1. Anden, kommer, England, öken, saken, ordet, bina, dagis. This actually functions more or less like stress in general in any language. If you pronounce an accent 1 word with the same type of intonation as you would in English, you're going to hit the mark fairly well. For example, English baron versus Swedish barren.
Barren.
See? It's the same type of intonation. Remembering this, you'll find that accent 1 is actually pretty easy to master because it's so similar in structure to what you'll find in other languages. This is also the reason why Swedish loanwords generally have accent 1. Alright, for accent 2, this is when it's getting weird. But weird does not equal hard, so bear with me here. Accent 2 is characterized by a double peak in pitch. What I mean is that the pitch rises in the stressed syllable, which is similar to, but quicker than in accent 1, and then it also rises again in the following unstressed syllable. Here's the more technical depiction of this. And now let's listen to some words with accent 2. Anden.
Anden.
Komma.
Komma.
Kvinnor.
Kvinnor.
Pojke.
Pojke.
Katter.
Katter.
Visste.
Visste.
Slutat.
Slutat.
Rolig.
Rolig. Yeah, so this is like definitely something I've recognised. Obviously, until this point here, I've not been able to like say this is a thing. But when I'm watching a lot of videos, of course, of like Swedish comedians speaking in Swedish, this is definitely something I know I've noticed, and I feel like it is kind of uniquely from the languages I've heard often, quite unique, and it kind of mark. If I was to hear like different Scandinavian accents, I think that's something that, I mean, obviously it says Norway has that as well, so it may make it more difficult, but I feel like when I'm listening, I think that's a Swedish sound, a Swedish language. So this is quite nice to actually finally understand this or delve a bit deeper into the language, and yeah, it's something I recognised before.
To put it in simpler
without
terms,
being able to
accent
say
1
what it
words
is.
sound like normal words, and accent 2 words sound as if they stress the second syllable once more. Let's try some pairs to see if you can hear the difference. Feel free to repeat after me to practice. Anden.
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 Buren.
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 Polen.
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 That one I said wrong for sure, man. Let me just say again.
Polen.
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 Tomten.
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 Gifter.
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 Juden.
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 Do you see what I mean? Practice
I see
pronouncing.
the meanings here. Duck in the spirit, the cage, and carried, Poland, the pole, which is funny, like sometimes people from Poland get called a pole, the plot, the gnome. Okay, man, those ones are quite different. Marries and poison. Some people might say they're related. Not me, means is fine. But the sounds, the Jew, okay.
The accents, and try to find a way to get them right. Whatever way is fine as long as it works for you. It doesn't have to be perfect or technically correct. If it helps you, then do it. Everything to make it simple, and everything to actually try to get the accents into the words at all. As I've said, if you want to sound like a native speaker, then you absolutely have to get the accents right. It's just such an integral part of the pronunciation of the language.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we're learning this in, I think, was it Central Swedish, or is it like Stockholm, their version of Swedish. Like, again, like I said, like, is there other parts of Sweden that maybe this is harder to distinguish between the two of them? I mean, like, I don't know if you do know, but like when people are learning Swedish outside of Sweden, like people from other countries, what version of Swedish is it they learn? Is there like a standard Swedish? Is it a certain regional version of it?
Now, we know the accent is super important, and we know that unless we get it right, we'll always sound like a foreigner. So, onto the million-dollar question. How do we tell what accent goes with what word? And before giving you the list, please keep in mind that there are few rules without exceptions. Accent 1 is found in words with one syllable, such as hund, katt, fot. This is particularly important when we add the definite article, because they will keep the same accent.
Okay, it's just interesting that like dog is like hund, which is like also in English can call a dog like hound as well. It's interesting that similarity. I know they're both like Germanic, but interesting to see the diversion, but we still use similar in English.
Hunden.
Hunden.
Katten.
Katten.
Foten.
Foten.
Then we have adjectives ending in isk, such as magisk,
Magisk.
grekisk,
Grekisk.
hatisk,
Hatisk.
fantastisk.
Fantastisk.
Then, words with 2 syllables where the second syllable is unique and not a traditional Swedish word ending. Hummus,
Hummus.
polio,
Polio.
pajas,
Pajas.
godis,
Godis.
and words with more than 1 syllable where the stress is not on the first syllable. Telefon,
Telefon.
servera,
Servera.
betala,
Betala.
egentligen.
Egentligen.
An exception here is nouns with stress on the second to last syllable. Väninna,
Vanina.
kopia.
Kopia.
Accent 2 is found in words with more than 1 syllable where the stress is on the first syllable and the ending is a recognizable traditional ending. Pojke,
Pojke.
hoppa,
Hoppa.
kvinnor,
Kvinna.
rolig,
Rolig.
15,
15.
flugit.
Flugit.
Also in compound words. Lastbil,
Lastbil.
sjukhus,
Sjukhus.
örngott,
Örngott.
brandman.
Brandman.
Problematic words are those ending in L, N, and R. Nouns can have either accent. Cykel,
Cykel.
fågel,
Fågel.
vinter,
Vinter.
versus spindel,
Spindel.
nyckel,
Nyckel.
syster.
Syster.
Adjectives in L and R have accent 1, but those in N have accent 2. Enkel,
Enkel.
simpel,
Simpel.
vacker,
Vacker.
versus egen,
Egen.
ledsen,
Ledsen.
öppen.
Öppen.
Present tense verbs in R always have accent 1. Springer,
Springer.
kommer,
Kommer.
leker,
Leker.
byter.
Bitter.
Compare with hoppar,
Koppar.
kallar.
Kalla.
Same thing with plural forms with vowel mutation. Änder,
Änder.
bönder,
Bönder.
stänger,
Stänger.
fötter.
Fötter.
Compare with katter,
Katter.
filmer.
Filmer.
All of this means that depending on the forms of a word, the accent might change within a single paradigm, such as läsa,
Läsa.
läser,
Läsa.
läste,
Laste.
läst.
Last.
Komma,
Komma.
kommer,
Kommer.
kom,
Kom.
kommit.
Kommit.
En katt,
En katt.
katten,
Katten.
katter,
Katter.
katterna.
Katterna.
Okay, so now, as a final note, and just to piss you guys off after learning all this, I'll share the final touch. This final piece is that we often don't pronounce the accent. I know, right? Now, let's calm down a bit. It's really not that bad. Actually, this will help you out. The thing is that we only pronounce the pitch clearly in words that are stressed. In unstressed words, we don't really care what accent they have, because if they're not stressed, they're not important. But this is not to say that the pitch accent only appears in words that are really emphasized. No, it has to do with the prosody of the language. As the rumor has it, Swedish is a very sing-songy language, and this is partly because we pick out certain words in a sentence that we stress a bit extra, while the other words we kind of just rush through.
I mean, that is one thing I've heard. It is quite like sing-songy or melodic, but it's also like quite satisfying to say the words. It's quite enjoyable to speak or to say words in Swedish.
Let me show you how this works. Jag kommer hem,
Jag kommer hem.
meaning I'm coming home. As you just heard, this is actually pronounced jag kommer hem.
Jag kommer hem.
The last word has a sentence emphasis, while the two former words are unstressed and thus blend together. This is what I'm talking about, and these are the words with a pitch accent. Now, in this sentence, the words on their own would all have accent 1, but because of the sentence prosody, only the last word is stressed, and thus only the last word is actually pronounced with accent 1. The first two words are just kind of rushed through. Jag kommer hem. See?
Jag kommer hem.
And this happens all the time. For example, jag äter kyckling, meaning I'm eating chicken. On their own, these words would have accent 1, 1, and 2. But together in a sentence, prosody takes over, and we only stress the final word, kyckling, with accent 2. The entire phrase is thus, jag äter kyckling. Okay, that's pretty much it. 2 things I want to say before I finish this, though. First of all, the prosody and the stress can of course vary from my examples if you intentionally emphasize words. Like if you say, jag äter kyckling, because you want to emphasize that you're eating the thing, not say drinking it or playing with it. My example was for a neutral, natural sentence. Emphasis always messes things up, but that goes for all languages, not just Swedish. Second, don't panic about the stress patterns in sentences. There are very clear rules and patterns to this, but I think they deserve to be dealt with in a lesson on their own. So stay tuned. Okay, that should about sum it up. Now, I know this has been quite an amount of information, but don't worry about it. Take your time, review the video, and practice at your own pace.
Okay, no, that was pretty cool, man. Like, very interesting. Yeah, like, again, I've heard words pronounced differently. I know it's quite Swedish. Again, like, looking at the amount of countries who have this sort of pitch accent, there's very little countries, so it's relatively unique in terms of like all the world languages. But yeah, it's cool to like be able to like now say what that is and what makes it unique, and yeah, to try and say some of the words. I don't know how my pronunciation was, but it's very fun to try and say those words at least. So yeah, tell me what you think about that. Is it something you know, again being Swedish, or do you just take it for granted having just learned the language, or just having always spoke it, you just don't really think about it? Is it hard to understand when someone doesn't pronounce it properly with the correct pitch? Tell me what you think. Thanks.